Hello everybody, in today's video I'm going to be showing you how to use the Google Maps API alongside Direction API and Flutter Polyline Points package and the Location package. Create an application that will allow you to visualize a map onto the screen, show points of interest on that map, show a route between these points of interest, as well as showcase the user's real-time location on the app. So by the end of this tutorial, you're going to have an app that is going to work and function similar to something that's being shown on screen. So with that said, let's get into the video. So to get started, the first thing that we're going to be doing is making sure that you and I are on the same starting position. So to do that, just create an empty Flutter project, and then we're going to be at the same position. Once you have a empty Flutter project initialized, what I'm going to be doing is that I'm going to be removing all of the boilerplate code that the Flutter CLI gives us. And instead of that, what I'll do is that inside of my lib folder, I'm going to create a new folder called pages. And then inside of there, I'm going to create a new file, which I'm going to call mappage.dart. Once this is done, I'm going to create a stateful widget under this, and I'm going to call this stateful widget map page and do command save. Then I'm going to come back to my main.dart file, and here, instead of using my home page widget as the home attribute, I'm going to use our map page that we had created, do command save, and we are good to go. So the first thing that we're going to be doing is tackling the issue of showcasing the actual map onto our device. So to do that, we firstly need to install the actual dependency onto our device and then configure it properly. I'll leave link to all of the resources that I use down in the description below, as well as the link to the completed source code that you can find on my Patreon. So the first thing that we'll do is that we'll install the Google Maps Flutter package. So to do that, I'm going to come to my pubspec.yaml file, and then under dependencies, I'm going to be adding Google Maps Flutter. Once this is done, the next thing that I'll do is that I am going to advise you to get an API key. To do that, you can take a look at the Getting Started section here on pub.dev for this package, and it's going to take you through the step-by-step process of how you can get the API key. Once you have the API given to you, the next thing that we're going to be doing is configuring the Android side of things. So to get the Android stuff working, firstly, you can click on Android, and then from there, click on App, and then a build.gradle. And here what you can do is that you can change the minimum SDK version to 21. Even though the recommendation here is 20, I found through my working that 21 was the one that actually was working best for me. Once this is done, the next thing that you need to do is that you need to specify the API key that you had gotten in the previous step in your Android manifest.xml file. So just copy this metadata description section here, come back, and then we are basically going to go to our Android app source main Android manifest.xml file, and then after this, underneath of this metadata section that you see here, you can paste that metadata key as well. And then where you see your KPI, your key here, you're basically going to be replacing this with your API key. Once you have the API key placed within Android manifest.xml, then you are pretty much done with the setting up of Android side of things. So now we can move on to the iOS side of things. For iOS, the setup is even more easy. All you have to do is go to the iOS tab, runner, and then from there, open up the app delegate.swift file. And then from here, what you're going to be doing is that you're going to be importing Google Maps like so. And then after this, in the function, the first thing that you're going to be doing before you actually generate plugin registrant function is called, you're going to basically add this line of code, and then you're going to paste the same API key that you had placed for Android here as well. Once you have pasted the API key within app.delegate.swift, then we are pretty much done with everything. And now what we can do is actually move on to running this application on the device and then actually showcasing the map. So to do this, what I'll do is I will just basically come to lib main.dart, and I'm going to run the application, and hopefully the application should start without any issues. So I'm just going to wait for the application to spin up onto my device, and then I'll resume the video. Welcome back, everybody. So as you can see, now that the application is running on our device and we have no errors, we can proceed with the next step. What I'm going to be doing is now I'm going to go to my map_page.dart file, and this is going to be the widget which is going to be responsible for handling all of the logic for our application. So this includes showcasing the map, displaying information relevant to markers on the map, the actual displaying of the path on the map, as well as getting access to the user's location, and then displaying that real time on the map. So the first thing that we're going to be doing is tackling the side of things, which is to actually showcase the map onto the screen. So to do this, it's going to be pretty easy. All we have to do is we have to go to our build function, and then for this placeholder, we're going to instead return a scaffold. And then for the body attribute of the scaffold, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be returning a Google Map widget. Once this is done, our Google Map widget expects an initial camera position. So this is where initially the map is going to be displaying us the actual map. And what we're going to be doing for that is that I'm going to basically copy and paste in a position for the Googleplex that is in San Francisco. So just give me a second to paste that in. Once we have the location for the place that we want the initial camera position to be, in this case, it's going to be the Googleplex location in San Francisco. What I'll do is that I am going to instantiate the camera position object, and then for the target, what we are going to be doing is basically passing in the actual position. So that's going to be p Googleplex, and then for the zoom level, I'm going to say 13, and you're going to just in a second see what actually zoom does. So if I do control save, you're going to see that now our app gets hot reloaded and we see the map being displayed on our screen. So this initial camera position is the actual position where the map focuses on, and then the zoom actually determines how far into the map we see or how far. So if I change the zoom level to, let's just say 2, and then reload the app, you're going to see that the map is going to be displayed from very far away. And then if we zoom very in by doing 15 and reload the app, then we're looking very close by. So I'm going to do 13 and then reload the app, and there we go. Everything is working now. So now that we have the map being displayed, the next thing that I want to do is that I want to show you how you can display points of interest using markers onto the map. So to do that, what I'll do is that I'll define not only the Googleplex location, but another location so that we can actually show 2 points on our screen. And then later on, we can use these 2 points to actually draw a path between them. So I'll add another location for Apple Park, and these are just lat and long data structures that we pass the latitude and longitude for these positions, and you can use any positions that you'd like. And then from here, what I'll do is that I am going to come and I'm going to find the markers property on my Google map, and then it's going to be a set. So I'll add some curly brackets, and inside of here is where we're going to be defining our markers. So to define a marker, you instantiate a marker object, and then you give it a marker ID, which is type marker ID, and then the value needs to be a unique value, which is a string. For the first marker ID, what I'm going to be doing is that I'm going to say underscore current location, and then once this is done, the next thing that I'm going to do is that I'm going to define the icon. So how is this actual marker displayed on our map? In this case, it's going to be bitmap descriptor.default, and then after this, I'm also going to give it a position. So what is the position for this marker going to be, which in this case is going to be p Googleplex. And then if I do command save, you're going to see that now our marker gets displayed. I'll also advise you to zoom out a bit, because when we add the next marker, you're going to be able to see that as well. So then I'll just copy this line of code and I'll paste it in again. And then instead of saying current location for the marker, I'll say that this is going to be source location marker ID default marker, and then we're going to say that this is going to be p Apple Park. To command save, and now we can see the location for Apple Park as well. So now that we have this done, the next thing that I want to do is actually focus on how we can access the user's location from the device using the location package, then how we can display that using a marker onto the screen. So to get started, the first thing that we're going to be doing is that we're going to be basically installing the package location into our Flutter project and then configuring it for use on iOS and Android. So I'll recommend that for this step, you stop running your application and then you copy the dependency, come back to pubspec.yaml, paste it after Google Maps Flutter, do command save, make sure that Flutter pub-get gets run, and then you, after this, can now focus on how you can configure this application to request the appropriate permissions from the user to allow the application to have access to their location. So for Android, what we're going to be doing is that we are basically going to be going to the Android manifest.xml file. And inside of the manifest.xml file, so let me just quickly go to that Android app source main Android manifest.xml. After the manifest, you are going to be placing the use permissions clauses here, and this is basically going to be requesting the appropriate permissions from the user. So once this is done, the next thing that we need to do is that we need to do the same thing for iOS. For iOS, you can add these entries to your info.plist in a couple of ways. The way I prefer to do it is that you can actually go to the iOS folder, and then from there, click on runner, info.plist, open it up, and then you can go to the very bottom, and you can add an entry which has a string and a key. The string in this case is going to be ns location when in usage description, and then the key is going to be the text. This is going to be displayed to the user for why we're requesting to access their location. I'm going to say want to display location, want to display location on map and track it. And then what I'll do is that I'll just copy this. I'll paste this entry once more, and this time we're going to use the ns location always and when in users description for the string, and I'll keep the key to be the same to command save, and this is pretty much all we have to do. So once this is done, what we are going to be now doing is that I am going to be closing down my info.plist file, and then I'm going to be now running the map_page.dart file again because all of the configuration is done now, and hopefully we are going to have no issues arise. While building the application for Android, I got an error which said that the location package actually requires a new version of the Kotlin Creator plugin. So if you get this error, then the easiest way to fix this would be to actually go to the Android folder, and then from there actually build.gradle, and then change the ext.kotlin version here to be something different than 1.7.10. I found out that 1.9.10 was working, but you can use whatever the latest version of Kotlin at the time of recording is. And then with this done, we can now start debugging the application again, and hopefully this time it should build successfully and run on the simulator. Welcome back, everybody. So now that you can see that the application is actually running on the actual simulator, we can now actually focus on getting the user's location. So how are we going to be doing this? Well, what I'll do is that I'm going to be defining inside of my map page state class a function which is going to be responsible for getting the location updates for the user. So to do that, I'll say that I'm going to define a function which will return a future void, and I'm going to say that it's going to be called getLocationUpdates, and then it's going to be an asynchronous function like so. Inside of this function, I'm going to define a boolean called service enabled, which is basically going to be a flag letting us know if we are allowed to get the user's location or not, and then another variable which is going to be of type permission status, which is going to allow us to actually determine if we are granted permission by the user. So for this, you can actually import the location package. Once this is done, what I'm going to be doing is that I'm going to say that we're going to check if our service is enabled. To do this, I'll say that I'm going to do await, and then I'm going to actually access the location controller. The location controller is something that we haven't defined up till now. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to go to the top of my map page state class. I'm going to create a variable of type location. I'm going to call this location controller, and I'm going to say that it's going to be equal to a new instance of the location object like so. Then I'm going to come down to where I was initially before. I'm going to say that we are going to say location controller, and then from there it's going to be a function on the location controller which is going to allow us to basically determine if the service is enabled like so. So service enabled, then we're going to check if the service is enabled. So this basically means if we have the GPS services available on our device. So I'm going to say if the service is enabled, then what I'm going to do is that I'm going to say that service enabled is going to be equal to await, and then I'm going to say that we're going to say location controller dot request permission. And what this is going to allow us to do is that basically request the service from the device. So we don't do request permission, we do request service. And if in the case that the service is unavailable to us, then we just want to simply return from this function, and there's nothing else that we'd like to do. Once this is done, the next thing that we need to do is that we know that we have the service requested. We need to actually ask for permission to use this location service. So to do that, what I'll do is that I'm going to say that I'm going to use the permission granted variable, and I'm going to set that equal to await underscore location controller dot has permission. And what this is going to do is check if we have permission to actually access the user's location. Then what I'll do is that I'm going to say if for some reason the permission is denied to us, so underscore permission granted is equal to permission granted dot denied like so. Then what we have to do is that we need to ask the user permission. So for that, I'll say permission granted is equal to await, and then I'm going to say underscore location controller dot request permission. And this is basically going to display a prompt on the screen requesting the user to allow us to access their location. If the actual location is not granted to us, so I'm going to say if the underscore permission granted is equal to permission status dot granted, and I'm going to say if the permission granted status is not equal to permission.granted, then what we'll do is that we'll return from the function as we weren't granted the permission, so we won't be able to access the location, and there's nothing else we can actually do. But once this is done, now we have access to the location, and we can use the location controller to actually get notified of the user's changing location. So to do that, what I'll do is that I'll say location controller dot on location changed, and when the location changes, what I want to do is that I want to listen to that, and I want to basically run a function. So the listen event is going to fire every time the location of the user changes, and then inside of this function body we can do whatever logic we want to do. So if the user's location changes, then what I want to do is that I want to basically update a variable. So firstly, I'll say that the listen function is going to take in a actual variable of type location data, and I'm going to call this current location. And then I'm going to say that if the current location dot latitude is not equal to null, and the current location dot longitude is not equal to null, then what we can do is that we can actually fire some logic for what we want to do when the actual location gets updated. So all I want to do is that I want to call a function called setState, and this is going to set the state and rebuild the actual map page widget for us and update whatever variables we place within it to the new data that we define here, and then rebuild the UI. So what I want to do is that I'm going to go to the top and I'm going to define a actual variable, and I'm going to say that it's going to be also of type lat longitude, but it'll be an optional variable, which means it can be null, and I'll call this the current position, like so. And I'm going to set that to be null at the start, like so. And then what I'll do is that I will go to the very bottom to where our listen function is, and within setState I'm going to say that we're going to set the current position to be equal to the current location's longitude and latitude. So for that, we'll initialize a lat and long object, and then inside of the latitude I'll pass in current location dot latitude, and then for the longitude I'm going to say current location dot longitude, like so. And we can use an exclamation mark because we're already doing a null check, so we can be sure that there's going to be a value here. And then once this is done, I'm going to do command save. So now that this is done, what I'm going to be doing is that after setState is called, for now what I want to do is that I want to just basically print the current location to the console, just so that we can see that we're getting access to the user's location, like so. And I'm going to paste this in after the setting of the current position. I'm going to go to the very top of our map page state class, and I'm going to define the initState function, which is a function that gets run to initialize the state once the object gets initially built, or this widget gets initially built. And after the super.initState, what I'm going to be doing is that I'm going to be calling the function, which is going to be get location updates, like so. Do command save, and now we are going to rerun our application. So as soon as that happens, you're going to see that now we see that Google Maps YT is asking me to access this device's location. What I'm going to do is that I'm going to say okay, allow while using this app, and then in the debug console, hopefully we should start seeing the location updates being given to us, which you can see here. We get an output saying let long 37 something and minus 122 something. So you can see that we're getting the user's position. So now that we're getting the user's position, the next thing that I want to do is actually show this position on the map. So to do that, what I'm going to be doing is that I am basically going to be going back to my scaffold, to the body attribute, and here I'm going to say if our current position is going to be equal to null, then I want to display something else, and if not, then we'll display the Google map. And if it is null, then what I want to do is that I want to return a center widget with a text in it as its child, and the text is basically going to say loading, like so. And then this is basically going to allow us to divert from any errors that might occur when our current position is null. So if it's null, then we just show a loading text, otherwise we show the actual map. So if I reload, you're going to see that for some time we see loading, and then we start to actually see the map. And once this is done, the process is pretty much going to be the same. I'm going to add a new marker, and this time we had the source location, and then this is not going to be current location, it's actually going to be source location, because we are going to basically create our map in a way that the Googleplex is going to be our source location, the Apple Park is going to be the destination location. So these are the 2 points between which we will generate a path, and then our user is going to go between the source and the destination following the path. So now I'll add a new marker like so, and I'm going to say that this is going to be the current location, and I'm going to say that this is going to be bitmap descriptor.default, and for the position it'll be current p, and we can add an exclamation mark because we know that for sure we're going to have access to the position. So if I do this and I reload the map, hopefully we should have access to the user's location now, and I think there you go. You can see that the user's location is being shown to us, and it's actually changing as well. As the user moves, you can see that it's actually changing. So how do you make the user move, or the GPS kind of simulate that the user is moving? Well, on Android, what you can do is that you can click on the 3 setting button here. You can come to this kind of UI, and then you can go to the section which calls location. Then you can click on the actual single points routes section. You can type in an address here like so by doing search, and then I'm going to say Googleplex, and then I'm going to say that I want directions between Googleplex and Apple Park like so, and then you can basically say this, you can save this route. Once you have this route saved, you can click on that route. So let me just delete this route because I already have this route, and then you can change the speed to be 5x, repeat playback if you just want the user to keep on switching back and forth between these points, and then play route. And as soon as you do this, you're going to see that our user gets retransported back here, and after some time you'll see that the marker will come out from here. So now that this is happening, what I want to do is that I want to basically make the map, make sure that the user is always in focus and in the middle of the map, and the map follows the user as the user kind of updates their position and navigates through the world. To do this, it's going to be very simple. The first thing that we're going to be doing is that we're going to be defining a controller for a Google map, which is going to allow us to control the functionality for a Google map. So I'm going to say I'm going to have a final completer, and I'm going to say that this is going to be of type Google Map Controller. And then I'm going to say this is going to be map controller like so, and then I'm going to set this equal to be completer like so, and then Google Map Controller like so, and then there we go, and then command save. Once this is done, the next thing that I'm going to be doing is that I am going to be going down to my Google Map, and I'm going to say on map created. I want to take the actual Google Map controller, and I want to set the controller variable that we had created to be this. So to do that, I'll do controller dot complete, and I'll pass the controller to it like so, and that's pretty much it. Do command save. So now it's giving me an error saying that the actual instance for this needs to be in here, and do command save. So now what's basically happening is that when the map gets created, we get past the Google Map controller to us, and then we basically save this variable within the controller variable that we had created. So we have access to this controller. So now that we have the actual controller available to us, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to create a function which is going to allow us to basically point the camera towards a specific position. So what I'll do is that I'll say that we're going to have a function which will be a future void, and I'm going to call it camera to position like so, and then I'm going to say that it's going to have a lat and a longitudinal position like so, and then it's going to be an asynchronous function. We're going to be passed a position, and this function will basically focus the camera of the map onto that position. I'll say that we have a final Google Map controller, and this is going to be equal to await underscore map controller dot future like so. And then after this, I'm going to say that we are going to define a camera position, which will be underscore new camera position, and I'm going to set this equal to be camera position, and we are going to give it a target. The target is going to be the position that gets passed to us. The zoom is going to be 13 because that's the zoom that we kind of found out works the best for us. And with this done, the next thing that I'm going to be doing is calling a function on the actual controller, await controller dot, animate camera, and then this is going to be camera update dot new camera position, and then the new camera position will be the new camera position that we have just created, like so. And then we have it. So while we were doing this, you can see that the actual user started to move on the map, as you can see, but our map is not moving. So now what I'll do is that I'll go to get location updates, and then what I'll do is that instead of printing here, I'm going to say that we're going to call the camera to position function, and we'll pass in the current position to that, like so. And I'm going to say that we'll do this, Alt-Shift-F and Command save. But before I do this, I want to make sure that you can see that our map is not updating to the user's location. It's not keeping the location of the user in focus. As soon as I do Command save and I reload the app, now you can see that as the user moves, hopefully the camera kind of moves with it and the user is being kept in focus. So now that this is done, the last and final thing that we want to do is that for the two markers that we have on our actual map, we want to display a path between them. To do this, we're going to be using a package called Flutter Polylines alongside the Directions API, and then those are going to work in conjunction to generate this path for us. So to do this, the first thing that we're going to be doing is going to our pubspec.yaml file, and here what you're going to do is add the Flutter Polyline Points dependency to the dependency section, to Command save, make sure that Flutter pub gets run. And once this is done, it's basically as simple as firstly importing the package. So I'm going to go back to the map page and then import the package. And once the package gets imported, then the next thing that we need to do is basically just define the logic that's going to take place for us to actually use the Directions API and get information from it. So what I'll do is that I'm going to be creating a function, and this function is going to be called get polyline points. So I'm just going to go to the end of my map page state class. I'm going to say that I'm going to have a function with that will return a future. It'll be a list of lat long points, like so, and then it's going to be called get polyline points, like so, and it's going to be a function which won't take anything. It's going to be asynchronous. And then what I'll do is that I'll say that we're going to have a list of lat long, and it's going to be polyline coordinates, and it's going to be equal to an empty list for now. Then what I'll do is that I'm going to say that I'm going to define a polyline points variable, and I'm going to call this polyline points, and I'm going to set this equal to polyline points, like so, and instantiate it. Then I'm going to say that I'm going to create a variable which I'm going to call polyline result. This is going to be the actual variable which is going to store the result of the call to the Google Directions API. I'm going to call this result. I'm going to set this equal to await, and then I'm going to say polyline points dot get route between coordinates. So get route between coordinates expects us to give it some coordinates as well as a Google API key, and then it basically gives us a directional route that we can follow. So for the Google API key, what I'll do is that inside of my lib folder, I'm going to create a new file. I'm going to call this const.dart, and inside of here, what you're going to be doing is that you're basically going to be creating a variable like so, which is going to be const of type string, and I want to say this to be Google Maps API underscore key, and you're going to set this equal to whatever the API key is, and it's going to be the same one that you've placed within the Android manifest and the iOS app delegate.swift file. So I'm just going to quickly take this API key, paste it in, and then we can get on to the next step. Once the API key has been pasted within the map underscore page.dart file, you can come to the Google API key section, and here you can just say that now it's going to be Google Maps API key. Then for the origin, what I'm going to be doing is that I will just paste this code in, because it's very simple. All we do is that we define a new variable, or we instantiate a class of point lat long, and we pass the Googleplex latitude and longitude to it. And for the destination, I'm going to do the same thing, but I'm going to say that this time it's going to be P Apple Park latitude and Apple Park longitude, like so. And then for the actual travel mode, which is an optional parameter that you can pass to this function, I'm going to say that it's going to be travel mode.driving. So depending upon what type of travel mode you use, it's going to return to you a different path that you can take. I want to do driving, so I'm going to do that and do command save. So now that we get a result, what I want to do is that I want to make sure that the result given to us is valid. So I'll do result.points.is not empty. And then once this is done, what I want to do from here is that I want to take the result for each of the points. I want to call the for each loop. And I'm going to say that each of the point is going to be a point, lat long point. And let me add a semicolon here. What I'm going to be doing is that I'll take my polyline coordinates, and to that I'm going to add it as a lat long object. And for the latitude, all you'll do is point.latitude, and then for the longitude, you'll do point.longitude. So we're just converting it from a point lat long to a lat long object, and then creating a list of these coordinates. So now that this is done, if the result that is returned to us is empty, I'm going to do print result.error message. And then finally, what I'll do is that I'm going to return the actual polyline coordinates like so. So once this is done, what we can do is that we can actually go to the very top of our init state function. And we can say that once we get the user's location update, then once this function completes, we can do something else, basically call a function. And this function is going to say that we are going to call the get polyline points function. And then here I'm just going to add an underscore because we don't care what the value is given to us once this function completes. So we're going to call get location updates. It's going to ask for the user's location. Once it gets the user's location and this function completes, then we're going to call the get polyline points function. And this will go ahead and actually run the function for us. And then when the get polyline points function is finished, then we should get an output, which is going to be a future, which is going to return us a list of lats and longs. So I'm going to call this to be coordinates like so. And I'm going to say that once we get the coordinates, all I want to do is that I want to print these coordinates to the console like so. So I'm just going to quickly do this, the command save, and then now we can actually run the application and make sure that some coordinates do actually get spit out onto the console. Welcome back, everybody. So the application actually spitted out a lot of logs, but in some of the logs you can see that a list was given to us of lat long points, which we can use to actually now generate a route on our map. So now that this is done, the next thing that we need to do is that we need to take these points that we got from the directions API and we convert it into these lat long object representations, and we need to figure out how we are going to be displaying them on to the actual map. So to do this, what we'll do is that we are firstly going to go to the very top of our map page state class. We're going to create a map which is going to be having key of polygon ID and then the actual value for polyline. Once this is done, I'm going to say that these are going to be polylines, and I'm going to set these equals to be an empty map for now. And then once this is done, then what I'm going to be doing is that I'm going to go to my Google map, and I'm going to say that after we've defined the markers, so let me just find, I'm going to say that we're going to have polylines, and these polylines is going to be a set of polyline, and I'm going to say that it's going to be a set that we're going to be getting from our polylines dot values. So we'll just take these map and we'll just make it into a set, and this way we are going to remove any duplicate values that we might have within our map, and then do command save. So for now, nothing's going to change. Why? Because we are not setting our actual polylines map to be something. So now we have to do this. So for that, what I'll do is that I'm just going to basically create another function. At the very end, I'm going to say that this function is going to be future, or this function can just be void. It doesn't return anything. I'm going to say it's going to be called generate polyline from points. And then I'm going to say that this is going to take in a list of lat long objects like so. And then we are going to call this polyline coordinates, I believe would be a good word. So I'll just do this, and then async as the function. The first thing that we'll do is that we'll define the polyline ID, and I'm going to say this is going to be ID as going to be equal to polyline ID and then poly. If you're showcasing multiple different polylines on your map, then you need to have distinct polygon IDs for each of these polylines that you generate. Then from there, I'm going to say that I'm going to create a polyline object. I'm going to call this polyline. I'm going to set this equal to a polyline. And then I'm going to say that the ID is going to be ID. The color is going to be how this polyline actually gets displayed. So in my case, the color is going to be colors.black. Then we are going to have points. These points are going to be our polyline coordinates that we got passed to the function. And the width, how thick this is going to be 8. And that's pretty much it. The actual ID section is giving me an error saying that the argument type polygon ID can't be assigned to polyline ID. So I want to change this to actually polyline ID, and then this to polyline ID as well. This should fix the issue for us. And then finally, once this is done, then what I want to do is that I want to call the setState function. And here I'm going to say polylines map ID is equal to polyline. So to command save. And then I need to go to the top and I want to change this from polygon ID. It needs to be polyline ID. An easy misspell to command save. And then we just run the application by just stopping it and then running it. So the application has started to run again and I didn't get any errors. So now what we can do is that we can actually take a look at if we are able to actually display these polylines onto our map. So to do this, what I'll do is that I am going to go back to my init state function. We get the location update, then we get the polyline points. And once we get the polyline points, that what we do is that we call the generate polyline from points function and we pass the coordinates to this. Alt-Shift-F, command save. And if, fingers crossed, I reload my application, a black map route is being generated between these 2 points. So the last thing that I want to do now is that I want to actually stop running the application on Android. And I want to just quickly build this application on an iOS simulator and make sure that this runs there as well. And if any issues do arise, I can showcase those issues to you guys as well. Actually start running the application on the iOS simulator, and hopefully the application should just spin up and should start working and we shouldn't have any issues. Welcome back, everybody. So while I was running the application on iOS, I found out that we get an error which might occur for you, might not, depends on if you're using an M1 Mac or the new Apple Silicon Macs or not. But if you do get an error which says that the debug console is telling you that linking an object file built for iOS for architecture ARM64 or something similar to this, then what you can do is that you can open up the iOS folder, the runner.exe workspace file. So let me just reveal this in folder, start the runner.exe, and then basically click on the runner, and then from here go to build settings. Then you can go to the excluded architecture section, and where it says i386, or if it doesn't say anything, you can basically add a key, any iOS simulator SDK, and then you can basically add ARM64 here like so. Then same for profile here, ARM64, and then the same is going to be applicable for release as well. So any iOS simulator SDK, ARM64. So just for the simulator SDKs. And once this is done, you can do command save, close this down, and try to run the application again. Now that the app is running, the last thing that I want to tell you guys is that if you want to replicate the same functionality that we did on Android for being able to change the user's location on device and simulate some kind of a driving or bicycle riding situation, for iOS you can go to the feature section, location, and then you can simulate some kind of a location here. So either a custom city run, city bicycle ride, or freeway. So if I do, for example, city bicycle ride, then it starts to do that bicycle ride, as you can see. So with that said, that's pretty much it for this tutorial. I hope that you enjoyed the video and that you found it useful. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, then please leave them down in the description below, and I'll try my best to answer them for you. And if you want to take a look at the complete source code and support my work, then you can find a link to that down in the description below. And as always, stay happy, stay healthy, keep learning, keep growing, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.